Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. Today is 28th August 2024 and today we have some important articles for the discussion in this session, and we'll discuss all these important articles. And before discussing them, yesterday I have given to you one prelims practice question. So that was a unified lending interface. So remember that unified lending interface is also a very important innovation that RBI is planning to roll out on a similar lines like unified payment interface. And we all knew that how unified payments interface is actually revolutionized digital payments. In a similar way, this unified lending interface will also revolutionize the credit facilities for the the borrowers. So therefore it is actually a platform for enabling the frictionless credit. So option B is the correct answer. Unified lending interface is a platform for enabling frictionless credit. If you look at the explanation part of this unified lending interface, it is actually a platform, right? So unified lending interface is a platform, and this particular platform is developed by Reserve Bank's Innovation Hub. And Reserve Bank of India also has an innovation arm, and this innovation arm of Reserve Bank is known as Reserve Bank Innovation Hub. And in fact, this unified lending interface is developed by the Reserve Bank Innovation Hub. And in fact, so this particular platform will standardize the application programming interface, right? So this application programming interface will essentially simplify the technical integrations, and it would also allow a plug and play approach for the digital access to diverse information sources, right? So apart from that, in fact, Jandan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity is called as a Trinity. And in fact, it has played a very important role in inclusive a financial inclusion. So we can say that financial inclusion, it has played a very important role. Now this unified payment interface and the unified lending interface, so along with Jandan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity, are together called as, or collectively called as, a new Trinity, and that will essentially drive India's digital infrastructure forward. So this is all about the unified lending interface. And today I have some another very important prelims practice question, that is, which of the following Central Asian countries actually border China, or they share their borders with China? So the options are Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, and select the correct answer code from the above given countries, right? So which of these countries, which are part of the Central Asian region, which is also known as CAR region, they actually share the borders with the China? And let's start this discussion with a very important article with respect to monkeypox pandemic, or monkeypox disease that has been spreading rapidly across the globe, right? Advancing equity from COVID-19 to mpox disease. So briefly try to understand the context of this mpox disease. Now we have faced the COVID-19 pandemic, and we have a lot of experiences of the COVID-19 pandemic. But after the COVID-19 pandemic, the world is facing another major health emergency, or threat to the global healthcare. So that is in recent times, the World Health Organization again declared that mpox, right? So monkeypox, and it is formally also known as mpox or monkeypox. The World Health Organization has declared this monkeypox a public health emergency of international concern, right? So this is very important, public health emergency of international concern. And in fact, when we talk about this monkeypox disease, so this monkeypox disease outbreak took place in Democratic Republic of Congo in Africa. And in fact, once the outbreak of monkeypox was reported in Democratic Republic of Congo, subsequently, so this monkeypox disease started spreading over several other African countries after this Democratic Republic of Congo. And in fact, so public health emergency of international concern declaration by the World Health Organization so comes in the wake of the cases of mpox, monkeypox, were identified in countries like Sweden, which is a Scandinavian country, which is a Nordic country, and Pakistan. It is western neighbor to India and even Philippines, and therefore we can say that the monkeypox disease not just limited itself to the African continent, rather it has been spreading to new parts of the world. So therefore it has been indicating that the virus is likely to spread beyond the African continent, and it would pose a public health emergency of international concern as well. And we need to understand so how mpox disease response has been mirroring the COVID-19 pandemic response. Now, one similarity between the COVID-19 pandemic and the monkeypox disease are both are zoonotic diseases, and in fact the zoonotic diseases are the diseases so which spread from the animals to human beings, right? So these are the zoonotic diseases. I hope you knew about this zoonotic diseases. For example, there are a number of zoonotic diseases, and rabies is considered as a zoonotic disease, and even COVID-19 pandemic, a COVID-19 virus is also considered as a zoonotic disease, right? So any disease or any disease causing pathogens which spread from the animals to human beings, and those diseases are called as zoonotic diseases. And when we talk about this mpox or the monkeypox virus, and this particular virus can be transmitted through a saliva and even respiratory secretions, even though it is not a respiratory virus. Remember, monkeypox is not a respiratory virus, rather it can be transmitted through saliva and even respiratory secretions also. And in fact, when we talk about the incubation period, right, there is a period called incubation period. Now, when we talk about this incubation period, so the time required for the virus to show symptoms once it has infected the individual, from it started showing symptoms, and that particular period is known as incubation period. And in fact, monkeypox disease, it can take up to 3 weeks after the exposure of monkeypox for symptoms to develop. And some other details with respect to this monkeypox virus. So this monkeypox virus is a member of a Poxviridae family, right? So it belongs to the Poxviridae family, and the virus is enveloped brick shaped, and in fact it is also large in size, 220 to 450 nanometers long, and in fact it is a double stranded DNA genome, and this double stranded DNA genome is encapsulated in a core which contains enzymes, and these enzymes are needed or required for the replication and even evasion of host immune defenses, right? So this is the basic structure of the mpox or the monkeypox virus. And in fact, the monkeypox virus also significantly differs from the COVID-19 pandemic in several key aspects, but one key aspect where monkeypox and COVID-19 pandemic differs with each other, in fact, so with respect to the vaccines, right? So there's a vaccine called Ankara Bavarian Nordic, or it is also called as MVA-BN vaccine. So still this vaccine is in the developmental phase, and this vaccine is produced by a Danish based company, and this vaccine is for treatment of mpox virus or prevention of mpox virus. So this Ankara Bavarian Nordic, or it is also known as MVA-BN, also known as Genoise. Okay, so another name of this MVA-BN vaccine is Genoise, and in fact it is already in the production stage by the Danish manufacturer Bavarian Nordic. And apart from that, this particular vaccine, MVA-BN vaccine, is produced primarily using primary chick embryo fibroblast. So this is also known as a CEF or CEF method or CEF technology, that is chick embryo fibroblast cell cultures. So this is the method, and that method is being used for the production of vaccine, and in fact it also shares its production process with several other vaccines, including those for measles, mumps, rabies, and tick-borne encephalitis. So these are also other diseases or diseases which are being caused by the viruses and other pathogens. And in fact, the vaccine manufacturing process of this MVA-BN for mpox virus also shares similarities with the vaccine manufacturing process of measles, mumps, rabies, and even tick-borne encephalitis. In this context, Indian manufacturers, we have a lot of vaccine manufacturers in India, right? So both in public and private levels, we have a strong vaccine manufacturing facilities in India. For example, we need to talk about the ICMR role during the COVID-19 pandemic, and we also have the Bharat Biotech as well. So we should not forget this Bharat Biotech. And apart from that, the Serum Institute of India, right? Serum Institute of India. So this also plays a very important role in terms of vaccine manufacturing. So that's why we could say that India has a strong vaccine manufacturing facilities, and Indian manufacturers in particular have the potential to play a very important or play a very critical role in ensuring the equitable access to this particular vaccine. So that vaccine is MVA-BN vaccine. Now remember, mpox as of now don't have any vaccine, rather its symptoms can be treated, right? So in fact, so headache, so specific medicine is administered for headache and even for rashes and even for muscle aches. So specific medicine is being referred to treat symptoms, but as of now for mpox there is no vaccine, right? So therefore it is very important that we need to immediately develop a vaccine to immediately contain, arrest the spread of monkeypox disease and also prevent monkeypox emerging as a pandemic similar to the COVID-19. So in this context, we need to develop vaccines as early as possible. So in this quest for having or developing vaccines for the mpox disease, Indian manufacturers of vaccines can actually play a critical and very important role, specifically ensuring the equitable access to vaccines. So for example, so imagine that whenever one country or one pharmaceutical company has produced these vaccines, so that particular pharmaceutical company have the technical know-how, they have the technology, and they also obtain patents. So therefore it would be very costly, high cost to afford such a vaccine for the poor and underdeveloped countries and even people who are suffering with poverty. Now one thing that we need to understand when we make comparisons between global south and global north, so global south is more vulnerable, right? Global south is more vulnerable because of higher levels of poverty, lower per capita income, poor capacity of the countries to in fact administer vaccines for such diseases. So therefore in this context, India comes into the picture, and Indian manufacturers can actually play a very important role in ensuring equitable access to this vaccine. So therefore equitable access essentially means that this vaccine would reach to almost all sections of all parts of the world, and it reaches the populations that need it the most at the right time. For example, take for example Africa. So African countries require this vaccine most, because most of the mpox vulnerable countries are African countries, and African countries have poor finances, poor technology, and poor vaccine production capacity. However, India is known as a pharmaceutical capital of the world. So therefore in this context, India can rightly play a very important role in ensuring vaccine equity, so that India has also ensured vaccine equity even during the COVID-19 pandemic times also, where other countries have been adopted vaccine nationalism, right? So in this context, what needs to be done to ensure equitable distribution of vaccines across all segments of the population? So we need to ensure technology transfer, right? So how can we ensure technology transfer? So as of now, India is well positioned to meet the challenge of equitable distribution of the vaccines. However, in India, we do have three major vaccine producers or vaccine manufacturers. So they are Serum Institute of India, which played a very important role in during the COVID-19 pandemic, as it produced a vaccine called Covishield, right? So we all knew about this Covishield vaccine, and this Covishield vaccine was manufactured by the Serum Institute of India, and Bharat Biotech has also produced another vaccine called Covaxin. So therefore, all these vaccine manufacturers can actually play a very important role. And apart from that, there is also another vaccine manufacturers, Zydus Cadila. So they already have a huge experience and expertise in terms of producing vaccines, and this expertise and experience can also be leveraged to produce mpox vaccine on a mass scale. But unlike COVID-19 pandemic, not all countries and all manufacturers and research institutes have taken up the task of developing mpox vaccine. So therefore, only vaccine which is being available, which is in the developmental stage, which is being produced as of now, production stage, is MVA-BN. So therefore, rapidly scaling up this MVA-BN production will actually require a comprehensive technology transfer from this particular pharmaceutical company to Indian vaccine manufacturers. So that technology transfer essentially includes sharing of biological resources, technological know-how, and even patents. So that plays a very important role in ensuring vaccine equity, right? So we all have been trying to achieve vaccine equity, and vaccine equity is very important because it would benefit the poor and underdeveloped countries across the world. Remember that we are living in a globalized world, right? So we are living in a globalized world, and since we are living in a globalized world, it is very important that everyone needs to be vaccinated. So we need to ensure that the poor countries and underdeveloped countries are adequately vaccinated. So that to happen, so technology transfer is very important for countries like India, which are having a better manufacturing facilities or vaccine manufacturing facilities, and at the same time making vaccines more and more affordable as well. And Indian government, along with the regulators, should actually collaborate with countries like United States, European Union, and even key international organizations such as World Health Organizations and Gavi, right? So Gavi is also, a vaccine alliance. So vaccine alliance, which actually produces vaccines on a large scale and also distributes vaccines to poor and underdeveloped countries. And even there is also a coalition for the epidemic preparedness innovation. So collaborations are actually required on a large scale and even a mass scale, so that they can actually negotiate with Bavarian Nordic for the transfer of technology. And these efforts can actually help in rapidly enhancing the production of low cost vaccines, and production of low cost vaccines on a mass scale, on a large scale, will also ensure equitable vaccines to MVA-BN vaccine. So that is very important, because we all knew that this mpox has been emerging as a public health emergency of international concern, and we should keep this in mind, and we should also rapidly scale up the vaccine production. So as of now, the only available vaccine at the international level is MVA-BN. So this is the only vaccine which is available at the international stage. So therefore, India is already having a technical know-how, and even India is having a lot of manufacturing, vaccine manufacturing facilities. So this technology has to be transferred to India, so that would ensure equitable distribution of vaccines to poor and underdeveloped countries, and that could effectively prevent the further outbreak of the mpox virus. because imagine if mpox outbreak reported in countries like India and Bangladesh with a huge population density, so that could be detrimental to the global health, right? So therefore it is very important step that India and other countries should collaborate with each other for the production of the mpox vaccines, so that will be benefiting both global north and global south as well. So this is what the author has been discussing in this article. And the next very important article, this is very important from the prelims perspective, so that is Typhoon Shanshan. Okay, so Typhoon Shanshan is going to hit the East Japanese coast, and in this context it is very important that we will understand about this, right? So briefly you can also go through the Typhoon Shanshan's characteristics also, right? So Typhoon Shanshan has intensified into a very strong storm as it approaches Japan's the southwestern coast, and that has prompted warnings from the weather agencies. Now weather agencies have started issuing warnings about the fast approaching very strong Shanshan typhoon. And in fact, so when we talk about this characteristics of Shanshan typhoon is a moving west, and it has been moving west because it has been blocked by a high pressure system and caught in the winds of a cold vortex. So since the sea surface temperatures are very high in this particular region, the typhoon is growing in its strength as it approaches this Japan, because increased sea surface temperature will actually add a lot of strength to these typhoons and cyclones, right? So we'll understand this, right? So first and foremost we'll understand the tropical cyclones, because tropical cyclones are usually called different names across different parts of the world, and in fact this is also one of the tropical cyclone. The typhoon is also one of the tropical cyclone, and we'll understand some characteristic features of these tropical cyclones. And these tropical cyclones, we all knew that they originate over warm ocean waters near equator. So one thing that we need to understand is that near equator this Coriolis force is almost zero. So we cannot say that the our tropical cyclones originate very close to the equator. So rather we could say that away from the equator, these cyclones originate over the warm ocean waters, specifically in the tropical zones, because tropical zones receive the highest amount of sunlight, and that actually helps in increasing the sea surface temperatures. So therefore increasing sea surface temperatures along with the warm and moist air further rises from the ocean surface, that would create a low pressure area. Okay, so you can see the steps one by one. So warm moist air, so that moves over the ocean because of increased sea surface temperature, and it will be surrounded by high pressure air, and this high pressure air moves towards the low pressure zone. Now imagine that this is the ocean water, and sea surface temperatures would be around 28 degrees Celsius, more than 28 degrees Celsius. Now because of the sea surface temperatures, generally what happens is that, so in this area, so there will be a low pressure zone generally forms, and this low pressure zone attract a lot of winds into this low pressure zone from the high pressure area. We all knew that winds generally flow from high pressure zone to the low pressure zone. So therefore the surrounding high pressure air moves into this low pressure zone, and that would causing the air to warm up and even rise further, because the air just moves in this low pressure area, and that will make the air to warm and the air rises up. So this rising air cools down, right? So that is what happens, because with the increasing altitude, what happens, the temperature drops, and that's the reason that the windward side of the Western Ghats receives one of the highest rainfall, more than 200 centimeters of rainfall is received over the Western Ghats, windward side of the Western Ghats. So since with the increasing height temperature, increasing altitude, temperature declines, and that would results in air cools down, and that will also result in formation of clouds. So this particular system spinning clouds, or right, so this particular, because air is moving up, so once it warms, it moves up, and this would result in the formation of clouds, and even wind intensifies with the ocean's heat, and as wind speeds further increases, an eye will be formed at the center of this particular cyclone. Now remember that about the tropical cyclones, UPSC already asked some questions in both prelims and mains examination. So in your prelims examination also it is very important, particularly from your mains point of view. So in general studies paper 1 and even general studies paper 3, it is very important part. So therefore you need to be clearly having a knowledge with respect to the tropical cyclones. Now what are the basic characteristics of the tropical cyclones? So these tropical cyclones have a center, and that center is typically calm and very clear, and with low air pressure in the center or cyclone eye, and the average wind speed around this cyclone eye is moving at around 120 km/h, and these cyclones have a closed isobars, a very closely arranged isobars, which have been representing the low pressure, leading to the higher wind velocities, and even isobars are imaginary lines on a weather map, so that actually connect points of equal atmospheric pressure, right? So they have a closed isobars, and that would lead to the higher wind velocity. So you can see here warm moist air. So that warm moist air moves over the ocean, and then water vapor rises into the atmosphere, and then so once water vapor rises into the atmosphere, as water vapor rises, it cools and condenses into the liquid droplets, and condensation releases heat into the atmosphere, making the air lighter, and the warming air continues to rise with moist air from the ocean taking its place, creating more and more wind. So over a period of time, it works like a cycle until cyclone makes a landfall, right? So when cyclone makes a landfall, immediately after the landfall, the moisture supply of this cyclone would be cut off, and that would make the cyclone further weaker, and therefore landfall of cyclone results in further weakening of the impact of cyclone. For example, the rainfall would starts declining, and the wind velocities would start declining. So that is how these cyclones actually work. So however, cyclones are being called with different names across different places. For example, if a cyclone originates in northwest Pacific Ocean, west of the date line, which actually passes through the Bering Sea, so those cyclones are being called as typhoons. And so there are some hurricanes which some cyclones which originate over North Atlantic Ocean and Northeast Pacific Ocean, east of the state line, and even the South Pacific Ocean, they are being called as hurricanes and tropical cyclones. So in Southeast Indian Ocean, we call them as tropical cyclones, and Southwest Pacific Ocean, so they are being called as tropical cyclones. And North Indian Ocean, so if there are any cyclones over the North Indian Ocean, they are being called as severe cyclonic storms, and in Australia they are being called as willy willy, and in South America they are being called as tornadoes, right? So this is how the cyclone actually the cross section of the cyclone actually looks like this way. Okay, so this is the eye of the cyclone, and it is a low pressure area, and this low pressure area attract winds from the nearby or surrounding high pressure area. And once air enters into this low pressure area, so because of the releasing of the heat through a cycle, so that makes the incoming air to become more warm and moist, and it is like a continuous cycle, and this is how it generally looks like. Next important article is India-Brazil strategic partnership. So we'll understand the context, right? So the 9th India-Brazil Joint Commission meeting, so that actually recently took place in Delhi. So right, so this is 9th India-Brazil Joint Commission meeting. So this particular meeting recently took place in Delhi, and this has marked a significant moment in the bilateral relations between these two countries, India and Brazil. Remember, India and Brazil are very important partners with each other, because Brazil is one of the dominant player in the entire South America, and both India and Brazil are part of groupings, multilateral forums such as IPSA and even BRICS grouping and even G20 grouping. So in all those groupings, and don't forget that G4, because G4 has been seeking reforms in the United Nations Security Council, or larger reforms in the institutions of the global governance. So therefore, like-minded countries or aspiring powers which have been demanding reform of the United Nations Security Council, and which have been seeking membership of the global high table, have actually formed this G4 grouping. This G4 consists of India, Brazil, and Japan and Germany. So they wanted the expansion of the UNSC, and they also wanted that these countries to be part of the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. So this particular 9th India-Brazil Joint Commission meeting recently took place in Delhi, and that has marked a significant moment in the bilateral relations between both countries, both India and Brazil. And in fact, this meeting has also highlighted the mutual support which was given during each other's G20 presidencies, because remember that Brazil is also one of the host country of this G20 summit. So from India, so India has actually passed on this G20 summit leadership to the Brazil. So therefore, the meeting highlighted the mutual support given during each other's G20 presidencies, and in fact, it also set a stage for the discussions on various areas of cooperation between India and Brazil. So what are the key highlights of this strategic engagement between India and Brazil? So both are strategic partnerships. So there is a strategic partnership between India and Brazil, and this strategic partnership between India and Brazil was established in the year 2006. Remember that whenever two countries are having a strategic partnership, so they are very close friends, and they also engage in a wide variety of areas. So therefore, India and Brazil became the strategic partners in the year 2006, and this expanded strategic partnership even covers a wide variety of areas ranging from defense, space, security, military, trade, biofuels, and even energy security, many more. So these are the number of areas where India and Brazil have come together and they're working on. And in fact, India and Brazil are known as the like-minded countries who have the common interests and even shared heritage, and both are developing countries with lot of challenges, and both countries are part of the global south. And in fact, India is also known as the leader of the global south, and there are number of topics which are discussed in this meeting. And when we talk about those issues which come to discussion, including the bilateral trade challenges that these both countries have been facing. Now, when we talk about the bilateral trade challenges, geography is a challenge, right? So a lack of geographical proximity is one of the main challenge between India and Brazil, and that has been making bilateral trade between these two countries more and more challenging. Rather, we need to explore avenues and alternatives to significantly enhance bilateral trade between these two countries. And energy cooperation is also another very important area, because remember, Brazil is a country with rich energy resources. So therefore, India is also one of the top energy consumer, third largest energy consumer in the world. So in this context, energy cooperation is also another area that both India and Brazil have been working together. And biofuels or sustainable fuels, so which is going to be the future. So biofuels is another area that they would work together, and several other cultural exchanges. And in fact, so the meeting between India and Brazil has also touched upon number of other areas also, including the multilateral cooperation in specific forums such as G20. Remember, India and Brazil are part of the G20 20 industrialized and 20 top economies of the world, and BRICS, and even UN, particularly the United Nations Security Council. And both India and Brazil have committed for promoting high level dialogue between the three India, Brazil, and South Africa partners. And in fact, it has also highlighted the strategic importance of this particular forum, which has created in 2003, specifically protecting and even advancing the interests of global south. Now remember that both India and Brazil are part of the global south, and in fact they are also a very important countries. And global south as a region has been facing a number of challenges, and therefore it is very important that like-minded countries like India and Brazil come together and address challenges such as poverty, hunger, malnutrition, right, malnutrition, terrorism, and even democratic values, because both are democracies, and democratic values, and even improving the living standards of the people. And climate change is another area so that they can work on, and disaster management is also another very important area, human resources development, defense cooperation, security cooperation. So these are different areas countries across global south can come together and work on, and India and Brazil can actually play a very important role in this context, right? So we'll understand India Brazil relations in an in-depth manner. So India and Brazil, as we have already discussed, that they have established strategic partnership in the year 2006. Way back they already had the strategic partnership, and the strategic partnership between these two countries sought to deepen in 2020 by agreeing to an action plan to strengthen the strategic partnership, right? So they wanted to further strengthen the strategic partnership between them, and they had established the strategic partnership between these two countries in the year 2006. And in fact both India and Brazil work together in various international forums, and these international forums including platforms such as BRICS grouping and India Brazil South Africa forum and G4 grouping, that just I have explained that these countries wanted reforms of institutions of the global governance, specifically United Nations Security Council, the G20, top 20 economies of the world, and even another grouping called basic, as well as the United Nations in the wider multilateral context. So don't forget that BRICS is one of the group which has been even challenging the G7 industrialized and developed countries group. Challenging G7 group is facing the threat and challenge from even the BRICS grouping. In this BRICS grouping, both Brazil and India are one of the founder members. And BRICS is, we all knew, yesterday we have discussed about this BRICS grouping. So BRICS is it is a group of 5 major emerging economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And BRICS grouping focuses on enhancing cooperation and dialogue on economic and political issues. And BRICS countries have also looking at a de-dollarization of the global economy, and de-dollarization of the global economy would certainly benefit both India and Brazil in the longer term. And G4 countries including India, Brazil, Germany, and Japan, so they decided to work together to press for the reform of institutions of the global governance, specifically the United Nations Security Council. So therefore advocating for increased representation and even more effective global governance, right? So these are the different areas that they work in tandem, and they also get a place at the global high table so that it would be more and more representative, right? So that is with respect to India-Brazil relations. And today we have a very important mains practice question, and this mains practice question is very important from general studies paper to social justice point of view, right? In social justice we have this, and apart from social justice, from society section of the general studies paper 1 also, this issue of manual scavenging is very important, right? So the question is, the menace of of manual scavenging still widely prevalent despite enacting the Manual Scavengers and the Rehabilitation Act of 2013. Now, in this backdrop, what are the major reasons for the prevalence of manual scavenging in India? And also, you need to write the ways through which it can be prohibited, and also you need to write some government initiatives for the rehabilitation of manual scavengers. So even though it would be a bit lengthy question, but this is a very important question in both General Studies paper 2 and paper 1 as well. And remember, in ethics case studies also such questions are being asked in the future. So therefore it is very important. Now, what will be the approach of this particular question? So how can we actually deconstruct this question? Because deconstruction of the question is very important. So when we talk about the deconstruction of the question, in the introduction you just briefly define what is manual scavenging, and if possible you can also write some data on a number of people who still engaged in the practice of manual scavenging despite enacting this Manual Scavengers and the Rehabilitation Act of 2013. And then you need to write the reasons and effects of manual scavenging, and third, you should suggest some measures to prohibit the manual scavenging, and then write government initiatives for the rehabilitation of manual scavengers, and ultimately you could conclude the answer. And first and foremost, in the introduction, as I have already told you, you could briefly define the manual scavenging. And when we talk about the manual scavenging, so manual scavenging is essentially a practice of manually cleaning, carrying, and even disposing of, or even handling of human waste in an unsanitary spaces. So this is how you could specifically define manual scavenging. And in fact, the unsanitary spaces and manually cleaning or handling the human waste in unsanitary spaces includes open drains, sewers, septic tanks, pits, and even railway tracks also. So as of now, on railway tracks, on even railway coaches also, so bio toilets are being introduced. So therefore there's no need for manually cleaning the coaches and even the railway tracks. So therefore there's a need for such other innovations or innovative ways of cleaning human waste needs to be introduced, so that would help in over a period of time eliminating the manual scavenging. And they are also usually self-employed or contract employees. They may be paid in cash or kind. So this is how you could briefly define manual scavenging. And in India, manual scavenging has been a long-standing issue, although it has been officially banned since the year 1993. Now we'll understand some reasons and effects of manual scavenging in India. Now when we talk about the reasons for the manual scavenging in India, most municipalities or municipal corporations, so they do not have latest machines for cleaning the sewage system. So they did not adopted any technology so that would actually clean the sewage systems in those municipalities. So therefore they substantially relied on the traditional ways of cleaning these sewage system. So that is being using through the manual scavengers. And in fact, the sewage workers are actually required to enter the underground sewerage lines through the manholes. So this would be another reason. And in fact, the manual scavenging in India historically associated with the caste system. So this is another unfortunate aspect which is so certain castes in India are being associated with cleaning the human excreta or human waste. So this is 75 years of our independence, more than 75 years of independence, but still we have been segregating people on the caste lines, and at the same time we also demarcated certain castes to clean the human excreta on their own hands. And it is very unfortunate that we do not develop technology, or even though there is a technology, we have not focused adequately by providing adequate funding to those technologies, so that human beings who are actually cleaning this human excreta so can be liberalized from this, right? So they can be free from cleaning this sewerage systems. So where certain castes have been marginalized, or there are certain castes so which are considered as lower caste, and they are very often being forced into occupation which are considered as unclean or even polluting. And this is the scenario in majority parts of our country, right? There are certain castes and there are also certain professions which are considered as unclean and polluting, and those castes would very often adopt such practices. And in fact, manual scavenging very often persists due to the limited alternative employment opportunities or due to the lack of employment opportunities. So that is a very problem. Now imagine that 4 or 5 people have engaged in the manual scavenging, that the government has decided to altogether prohibit and ban manual scavenging. Now the government literally failed to provide alternative employment opportunities. If government provides them the alternative employment opportunities, so they will not again be part of this manual scavenging, and that is another major reason for the prevalence of manual scavenging in India. And in fact, people who have actually engaged in the work of manual scavenging, so they usually face the higher vulnerability, and they also face the higher risk of contracting diseases such as cholera, typhoid, hepatitis, and even various respiratory infections as well. And in fact, the absence of protective care and even poor sanitation conditions, so they could further exacerbate the health hazards, and that would lead to the higher incidence of illness and premature deaths among the manual scavengers. And apart from that, the constant exposure to the filth, indignity of work, and even discrimination that they actually face, it took the toll on their mental well-being. And manual scavengers very often experience feelings of shame, low esteem, depression, leading to long-term psychological trauma. So these are the major reasons for the prevalence of manual scavenging in India, and also the effects that they actually go through. However, there are certain measures that can be adopted to altogether prohibit this manual scavenging, this derogatory practice. So there is actually a need to embrace technology. For example, IIT Madras has recently found out an innovative solution, that is Bandicoot. Okay, so Bandicoot. So this Bandicoot is a robot, and that robot can be used to clean manholes, right? So such technological innovations or new technologies innovations are the need of the hour. So we need to develop innovative tools and even machinery, so that could actually replace the manual scavengers and their tasks. For example, automated sewer cleaning robots. And therefore there is a need to encourage the training and skill development of the affected individuals. So rehabilitation and resettlement of people who are already engaged in the manual scavenging is very, very important. So therefore, in order to ensure that, we need to provide them adequate training and skill development, so that would help them find out the alternative employment opportunities. And we should also invest adequately on sanitation infrastructure, and this sanitation infrastructure includes construction of modern toilets, sewage treatment plants, and even efficient waste management systems. So we need to invest in all these areas. So however, the government has brought in certain initiatives for the rehabilitation of the manual scavengers. So for example, the government has actually introduced prohibition of employment as manual scavengers, and the Rehabilitation Act of 2020 has also brought. And this bill actually calls for a complete mechanization of cleaning sewers and even septic tanks. So this is a bill that must be welcomed. And secondly, a prohibition of employment as manual scavengers and the Rehabilitation Act of 2013 is the main legislation that aims to prohibit and even eliminate the manual scavenging in India. And similarly, there are certain other initiatives such as Safai Mitra Suraksha Challenge and Swachhta Abhiyan app, Rashtriya Garima Abhiyan, and National Mission for Safai Karmacharis for the welfare of the people who have engaged in the manual scavenging. So these are certain initiatives that the government has actually launched. However, you need to stress on ensuring that manual scavengers are free from this age-old practice, which is derogatory and which is also violating the human dignity and Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, right? So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. If you like our work, please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. Thank you.